Hey guys, क्या आप एक अच्छा कैमरा लेना चाहते हो in 2023 but you are on a slightly tight budget? तो guys, if that's the case for you, this video is for you. आज की वीडियो में guys मैं आपको अपनी टॉप 5 recommendations और लिस्ट ऑफ कैमरास बताऊंगा जो कि आपको बहुत अच्छी आउटकम देंगे in terms of both photography and videography. This means I'll kind of cover a lot of different aspects about autofocus, picture quality, and all of the different features. But these 5 cameras will give you a very good outcome in both photography and videography. जो भी आपका niche है, जो भी आपका preference है. And of course, we will consider the prices of these cameras so that they are not super expensive and also not extremely cheap. Cheap तो आजकल कोई कैमरा नहीं है, but we'll kind of consider the middle ground in this case. Cameras that are ranging from 35,000 to around 70,000. So that's the budget that I'm considering. So it's not super expensive and also not cheap. So guys, मैं both DSLRs and mirrorless cameras cover करूँगा. My preference is still mirrorless, but क्योंकि this is a video that talks about budget cameras, so I will also include some of the cheap or relatively cheap DSLR cameras we have on the market. तो पहला कैमरा है Nikon D3500. Now, if you are big on photography and probably not that much on videography, so I would highly suggest you to go with Nikon D3500 because in terms of photography features, this camera is really, really good. So I'll kind of quickly cover some of the basic features of this camera. So it has a 24 megapixel CMOS sensor. Of course, it will give you very high resolution pictures, not a problem in that case. This camera can shoot up to 5 fps and also has an ISO or till 25,600. So this means low light performance भी इसकी अच्छी है, and अगर आपको continuous shots लेने हैं तो उसके लिए this camera is also good. 5 fps is not bad. अगर वीडियो की बात करें, this camera can shoot up to 1080p with 60 frames per second and it also has 11 autofocus points. Now based on my experience, जो autofocus है या फिर active tracking है, eye tracking और face tracking in terms of video, it might not be the best, but yeah, that's why I'm saying I'm already paraphrasing this. Nikon D3500 is gold in terms of photography, but perhaps videography may, just because its autofocus is not at par with the rest of the cameras, it's not the best. तो अगर आपका photography main kind of a area है या फिर niche है, then Nikon D3500 is a really good camera for you. It's very affordable. I think its price is around 30,000. वो camera body की price 30,000 है. And I think if you buy another lens, it can be an 18 to 35 millimeter lens, or if you want to buy a prime lens, you can do that as well. Prime lens, so I think Nikon ka 50mm is like 8,000-9,000. So in 40,000, you can get a very good camera with really good picture quality. And of course, prime lenses are the best when it comes to photography. So this is my first camera. So Nikon D3500 is a really good one. I used it, I think 3 or 4 years ago. Now I shifted to Sony, but my first camera was actually Nikon D3500. So that was my first recommendation. Really good one. Second one is Canon's 200D Mark II. It's, of course, I think you already know about this camera. It's very popular and it's a very good camera when it comes to the budget segment. I think I'll just quickly cover again some of the major features. It has a dual pixel autofocus system. Eye detection bhi hai. This means it is a really good camera in terms of both photography and videography. Videography pe agar zyada focus karo to this can actually shoot up to 4K with 25 fps. So really good. Eye detection autofocus hai, and because it's a Canon's dual pixel autofocus system is really popular. So this means you can quickly trust this camera in terms of good autofocus when it comes to your face or perhaps any other subject. In terms of photography, I don't think there is any kind of doubt in that case. Processor, it has a Digic 8 processor, which is extremely fast, kind of produces a high quality image for you. It also has a 24 megapixel sensor. So yeah, I think you can blindly just trust this camera if you have a slightly larger budget in terms of, if we compare it to Nikon D3500. I think this camera will cost you around anywhere between 50 to 60,000 rupees, including lenses. So if that is your budget, then yes, definitely go for this camera. I think it's a very good camera in terms of overall performance for both video and photography. So yeah, that's my second one. And for the third one, again, it's the same company, Canon's M50 Mark II. It's again a mirrorless camera. Is really good if you have your main preference or your main niche is videography. I would only say if you're more focused on photography, then go for the Canon 200D Mark II. Both are I would say in the same price range. There's not much difference in this case. But अगर आपका photography main niche है या फिर main preference है, then go for the Canon 200D Mark II. अगर आपका photography and videography दोनों ही है, then go for Canon M50 Mark II, because in terms of autofocus performance, Canon M50 Mark II is excellent. It also has the same dual pixel autofocus system, but in terms of overall tracking and the points in the camera, they are way more than Canon 200D Mark II, and that's exactly why I would recommend you to go for Canon M50 Mark II if your main preference is videography, because ये camera आपको 4K में shoot करने देता है, and you can even shoot vertical videos with this camera. I mean, there are some modes that can help you record vertical videos better. So overall, this is very lightweight. अगर आपको gimbal भी आपके पास या future में आपकी preference है कि gimbal भी खरीदना है, then this camera is really good. Of course, इसके lenses भी relatively cheap हैं if you look at DSLR lenses. So you can definitely go with Canon M50 Mark II, and that's my third recommendation if you have a preference of your main preference is videography. In terms of price, this will again depend on what kind of lens you're purchasing with this camera, but I think the range of this camera is anywhere between 55 to 70,000. ये थोड़ा सा expensive है Canon 200D Mark II से. I think Canon 200D Mark II you can get it for 50 to 55,000, but M50 Mark II I think 5 to 10,000 expensive है 200D Mark II, but this is definitely worth every buck, and I would definitely recommend you to go for M50 Mark II if you have the budget and if your main preference is video. Okay, let's talk about the fourth camera. So this time I'm moving towards Nikon. So we have something called Nikon Z50, which is again a mirrorless camera. It has a 20 megapixel CMOS sensor. It's an APS-C sensor, and it can record up to 4K videos again, and it also has 209 autofocus points and almost covers like 88% of the screen. So overall, video recording के लिए again this camera is really good, and I think we all can agree Nikon has a very good reputation when it comes to photography as well. So if again your main preferences are both photography and videography, or you want to buy a camera where you would like to make sure that both photography and videography aspects are covered, you have all the features, then Nikon Z50 is the camera for you. It can shoot 4K videos up to 30 FPS, and also it also supports 120 FPS at 1080p video resolution. So yeah, that's I would again suggest you to go for this camera. It's a little expensive than Canon M50 Mark II. So the camera body will cost you around 65,000. So of course camera body तो आप लोगे नहीं, उसके साथ आप lens भी लोगे. So I think overall this might cost you anywhere between 75 to 80,000 rupees. It is expensive. अगर आपका इतना budget नहीं है, then I would seriously recommend you to go with Canon M50 Mark II, because the lenses for Canon are also relatively cheap when you compare it to Nikon, and they also give you almost equal features when it comes to comparing with Nikon Z50. Of course, Nikon Z50 is an amazing camera, but it's slightly on the expensive side. But I still wanted to cover this or kind of recommend you this, because the features that this camera supports are better than M50 Mark II overall. Yeah, so that's my fourth recommendation. And for the final fifth recommendation, I'm moving towards Sony. Sony ke cameras, I think we all can agree, it's a little bit expensive, but we have one camera that is kind of a standpoint also very, very, very popular among the whole industry itself, and that's called the A6400. So it is again on the expensive side. I think the camera body alone costs anywhere between 70 to 75,000. But when it comes to video performance, Sony overpowers everyone. Like literally, I'm talking about the Sony A6400. It's better than M50 Mark II. It's better than Nikon Z50. But it's just that it's slightly expensive. 70 to 75,000 के बीच में आपको body मिल जाएगी. And उसके ऊपर अगर आप lens लोगे तो I think it will anyway cost you between 80 to 85,000. Yeah, so it has a 24 megapixel APS-C sensor. It can record 4K video. It also has a tiltable screen. And the best thing about this is it supports hybrid autofocus system with 425 detection points. This means the autofocus capabilities of this camera is way par than any of the Nikon and Canon cameras that we just discussed. So yeah, I think this is something you can definitely consider to buy if you have a budget of anywhere between 70 to 80,000. Of course, it's not less. थोड़ा सा expensive ही है, but still that's why I'm considering this at my fifth point. So yeah, I think Sony, again, I don't want to comment a lot because इसके lenses भी थोड़े से expensive हो जाते हैं. So if you have that much budget and Sony is a preference for you, and your main video or main preference or main niche is primarily like video recording, मेरे को videos बनाने हैं, then yes, you can seriously consider Sony a6400. I am also shooting with a Sony camera. I'm using a Sony a7 III. It's a full frame body, but I also had a choice to either go with Sony 6400 or Sony a7 III. I chose a7 III in this case, but a7 III थोड़ा ज़्यादा expensive है. A6400 is definitely worth every buck, and yeah, I think it's gonna cost you around 70 to 80,000 rupees. And that concludes the 5 cameras that I had in mind. I hope this video was helpful. थोड़े से expensive भी हो गए end में जाकर, but quickly cover everything. अगर आपको photography करनी है, budget बहुत कम है आपका, go for Nikon D3500. अगर आपको photography and videography दोनों करनी है, then go for Canon M50 Mark II. These are the best cameras. अगर आपको थोड़ा सा budget कम है, you can also consider for Canon 200D Mark II. बहुत अच्छा कैमरा, you will not regret that decision. अगर आपकी मेन प्रेफरेंस सिर्फ वीडियो ही है, थोड़ा सा आप ज़्यादा स्पेंड कर सकते हो, then go for Sony a6400. It's a really good camera. The only downside to this camera is it doesn't have stabilization, inbuilt stabilization. तो वो थोड़ा सा दिक्कत हो सकती है, but overall it's a very good camera. So look for the features. Of course, I'm not diving into them. I think that's going to take a lot of time. So I hope I gave you a good idea. So yeah, that's it. If you like the video, do hit the like button, comment agar there are some other cameras that I missed, or perhaps if you have other recommendations from Panasonic or other brands, let me know. I can also consider creating another video. Cool, I'll see you in the next video then. Thanks for your time. Bye bye.